Did you know that these very ugly rocks are worth millions of dollars? And now you may be wondering, but if they're so ugly, how can they be worth so much? Well, you'll find out in this video, because that ugly rock you found lying around could be worth a lot more than you think. Now, imagine for a moment that you're walking through nature until you stumble across an ordinary stone out there, feeling a lot of pain in your foot. You decide to take that stone home. Time passes, and a few years later you discover that it was actually a very valuable rock, worth millions of dollars. Well, as much as you might think that this is an exaggeration on my part, you should know that it really happened. Not only that, but if you stick with me for a few more seconds, I'm going to tell you how to identify this type of stone if you find something similar in nature. So pay attention, because if you're lucky enough to find one of these stones, your financial life could change overnight. Our incredible story begins in the famous land of kangaroos, also known as Oceania. And although it didn't happen in the United States, this strange case serves as an example for those of you who don't live in Australia, and you'll understand why. In 2015, a man named David was prospecting in a regional park near Melbourne to see if he could find anything interesting and valuable. To do this, our friend David was equipped with a metal detector, and when he ran the sensors over the ground, he discovered something unusual, a reddish rock, much heavier than normal, completely encased in yellow clay. Driven by curiosity, he took the rock home and did everything he could to crack it open, because he was sure there was gold inside. But it could be any metal. How could he be so sure that he would find gold? Well, he wasn't actually being naive in believing that, because the region where he found this mysterious rock had once been a region abundant in gold. So David tried everything he could to open the stone. He used a stone saw, drills, tried dipping the stone in acid, and also used a very large sledgehammer. But apparently all his efforts failed. It seemed that nothing was able to open that rock. And that made David even more curious. He kept thinking, what the hell is that? But with no answers, he decided to keep it in his garage. And it wasn't until 4 years later that he took the rock to a downtown museum. After careful analysis, researchers discovered that the mysterious 17-kilogram rock David had found was actually a very rare meteorite, much more valuable than gold, worth $14 million. It was an extraterrestrial rock that had come from another world, through space, in the form of an authentic meteorite. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what was this rock anyway? Well, I'll explain. But have you ever considered, what if David had damaged the meteorite in his failed attempts? Or worse, what if he threw the meteorite away? We'd never know what that rock was. And although we have no information on how much David ended up selling his precious rock for, you should know that any meteorite is highly valued, some of them more than gold and diamonds, especially if it is rare, because it can provide crucial information about the origin of the universe, which can lead to very important discoveries for science. For this reason, it is highly sought after by mineral collectors and scientists around the world. But what was the rock that David thought was gold? Well, after cutting it with a diamond saw, scientists identified tiny crystallized droplets of metallic minerals called chondrules and a high concentration of iron in its composition, classifying it as a common chondrite. In other words, David's meteorite was a common chondrite. But now imagine that you are lucky enough to find such a rock. How do you identify a meteorite? How do you know if a visually ugly and plain rock is a meteorite? How do you tell the difference between a meteorite and an ordinary rock? I'm going to reveal all the tests to you now, so pay close attention, because I'm going to remind you of some points about identifying a meteorite that are very important when you find another rock in nature. If you already follow the channel, you may already recognize some of these tests, but it's always worth remembering, and it's worth looking at new images of other rocks from other meteorites. It's good to know that meteorites are divided into 3 basic groups, which are practically iron, stone, and stone. But practically every meteorite has a significant amount of extraterrestrial iron and nickel. So the first step in identifying a meteorite is the magnet test. Usually the magnet will stick to a meteorite so strongly that it will be difficult to remove it. Since many rocks on Earth are also attracted to magnets, this is not a definitive test. It's just the first step in our identification process. Of course, there are some very rare types of meteorites that are not attracted to magnets, but they are so rare that even experts disregard a rock that is not attracted to magnets as a meteorite. Another interesting point to note if you find another rock and decide to take it home is its weight and density. A meteorite is basically made of iron, so it's very heavy. I know that an ordinary rock of considerable size is also heavy, but a meteorite can weigh about 3 to 4 times more than an ordinary rock of the same size. A meteorite the size of an orange, for example, can weigh more than 2 kilos, as opposed to an ordinary rock that weighs about 500 grams. Our next step is to identify something called a fusion crust. When a meteorite enters the atmosphere, it burns, causing its surface to become dark and scorched from the heat. Over time, these meteorites lose this crust, but it makes the stones look duller and darker. Ordinary stones found in nature usually don't have this, but a recently fallen meteorite will show the fusion crust better. So if you have a dark stone that is also attracted to magnets, you should notice this. In addition, another very curious aspect of meteorites, known as meteorite fingerprints, are very characteristic marks called regmaglites. When we see these marks on a stone, we can already suspect that it might be an authentic meteorite. These marks, the regmaglites, look like holes made with your finger in a piece of clay. This is practically what a regmaglite looks like, and this is not a common feature on terrestrial rocks. Take note if there is such a mark on a stone you suspect is a meteorite, as it could be a strong indication that it is not an ordinary stone, but a valuable meteorite. Another interesting thing to look for is called a flow line, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the flow line is a feature that is only present in meteorites, which means that Earth rocks don't have a flow line, which is the molten metal at the time the meteorite enters the Earth's atmosphere. Because of the heat, the metal from the meteorite flows down the rock, leaving vein-like marks. And although this detail is a little more difficult to observe, if you can learn to identify a flow line in a rock, you can identify an authentic meteorite, which could lead to a few $1 million in your bank account. Another interesting thing is the metal flakes. However, the burnt diffusion often hides these metal flakes, making it difficult to see this feature. In this case, all you have to do is polish the stone a little or saw off a piece to see the colored metal spheres inside the stone. But that's not all. You can still see them with magnifying glasses. And finally, it's worth remembering that by accessing the first link in the description, you can get the best and most complete gemology book for beginners in the world, where you can discover everything about identifying precious gems in detail with unique content that you will not find anywhere else, such as an exclusive module about diamonds. It's years of study in one place at an extremely affordable price. So if you like the world of gems, don't forget to go to the first link in the description so that you don't end up doing what David did. Be aware that meteorites are the cheapest way to explore the universe. In fact, this is one of the main reasons why the value of meteorites is so high, because these meteorites can lead to very important scientific discoveries. That's why it's always worthwhile to examine the rocks you find lying around or have stored at home. After carrying out several of these tests, you can send a sample or a small piece of it for analysis to a museum in your region, which will submit your sample to the final test to certify to you whether it is an authentic meteorite or not. Also, this test is important because it will tell you if it is a rare type of meteorite or not. And that's where the question of value comes in. When people find a suspicious meteorite, they immediately think of the value. But this should be taken calmly, because a meteorite can be worth from $10,000 to $1 million, depending on how rare it is. Do the tests first and watch the video again if you need to, and be careful not to miss a stone. Who knows? You might be on the verge of a major scientific discovery, or a fortune, right? But before we go any further, one last thing. If you want to get more videos like this for free on your phone, just subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because in case you didn't know, you can learn how to find diamonds by watching this video or by going to the first link in the description.